The table felt like ice beneath my palms. Above me, a lone bulb hung, spilling its weak, washed-out glow that stopped just short of the room's corners, leaving them steeped in shadows. A stack of paper slid across to me. A severance agreement. Stark. Unforgiving. Its words inked with finality. No margin for plea or compromise. Budget constraints, she murmured. The phrase carried no warmth, no weight, yet it left a bitter aftertaste in my mouth, sharper than the chill in the air. Her gaze was level, composed, like the calm at the center of a storm that had already torn everything apart, leaving only the wreckage. I swallowed hard, my lips pressed tight as though choking on stones. The calendar on the wall hung crookedly, silently marking the fracture of time. 3 days. 3 days short of my pension vesting. 29 years reduced to nothing more than fading imprints in a dry riverbed. I pushed back my chair, its legs sighing against the floor. I didn't argue, didn't raise my voice. The silence pressed heavier than any words could. She said I thanked her later for the opportunity, but all I remembered was the hollow echo of absence. The door latched shut behind me. Outside, the city surged with noise, but inside me, an emptiness spread like a wound. The night's air carried the taste of iron and regret. The severance paper folded inside my pocket felt less like a document and more like a riddle of betrayal. At home, the phone rested on the bedside table, mute but waiting. My hand hovered over it, fingers trembling against the receiver's edge. The clock's minute hand crawled forward like a faint heartbeat under my skin. I dialed. She answered on the second ring. My daughter. Her voice was soft, tentative, as though it belonged to another lifetime. Once her laughter had lit our home like sunlight through open windows. Now it was only a memory, fragile as dust. For a moment I couldn't speak. I only listened to her breathing, shallow, uncertain. Then the words came, heavy and deliberate, spilling secrets I had locked away. She had seen the cracks before anyone else. She had gathered the fragments we left behind. She knew even when I had pretended not to. The next morning, the building reeked of old paper and wilted ambition. Riding the elevator down felt less like going to work, and more like descending into a mausoleum of broken promises. Every floor was a gravestone etched with fading memories. My badge still clipped at my side, the empty desk waiting like a coffin, fluorescent lights flickering overhead in their endless hum. She waited behind the glass wall, posture flawless, expression carved in stone. Boss. Wife. Executioner. Budget constraints, she repeated, sliding the paper across the polished surface as if it were the final cut. The words tasted like soot in my mouth. Something inside me twisted tight. A knot of betrayal. 29 years stitched into the fabric of my life, now unraveling in silence. What remained was this cold dismissal, and a lie once called love. I thought of that night long ago when doubt had first entered my heart. The shadow in her eyes as she spoke into the phone, her voice lowered, her gaze distant. I had wanted to cling to the daylight, but night had its own truths. She always held the reins, unwavering, commanding. Our marriage had been a quiet battlefield, where power and affection constantly collided. My loyalty had been my shield, her ambition the sword. And now the sword had turned inward. Later, the ticking of the clock grew deafening as I sat staring at the folded paper on the table. A map inked in betrayal. Her face haunted me, calm, unreadable, like still water before a violent storm. I reached for my old leather jacket, the one she once said smelled of faded dreams. Rain began to fall outside, gentle at first, then heavier, as if the sky itself grieved. And in the downpour I saw her face again, not as my superior, not as the betrayer, but as the woman who had once whispered promises under constellations. The woman who had held my secrets. The woman who now held my ruin. I thought again of my daughter, the single thread binding me to what was left of truth. My phone buzzed softly, a reminder that the past had returned to demand its due. I stood by the window watching raindrops carve uncertain paths down the glass, each one a memory sliding away into darkness. Neon from the city below bled across wet streets, broken and refracted. The fire of anger had burned out. What remained was something colder, clearer. The betrayal wasn't only in the act of dismissal. It lived in the silence that followed, in the unspoken debts, the vanishing of trust without a word. I lit a cigarette, inhaling until it scorched inside me, smoke curling upward like a black prayer. A slow, patient resolve began to stir. The night stretched endlessly, taut as a wire, humming with tension. My movements were deliberate, quiet. A shadow born of regret, but also of something harder. The call I made that evening wasn't one of desperation. It was a reckoning. A single name spoken into the dark, unlocking a door I had left closed for far too long. She answered, her silence heavy with fear. I chose my words carefully, carved from years of quiet rage. There was no undoing what had begun. In the days after, the ground shifted beneath us. Alliances shattered. Secrets unraveled thread by thread, until the empire she had built began to collapse. Not in thunder but in whispers. I watched from afar, her mask still intact to the world, yet faltering in the cracks between her gestures and her silence. The severance agreement remained folded on my desk, no longer a wound, but a relic of another life. I was not the man who once bowed my head and said thank you. That man was gone. In his place stood something colder, sharpened by betrayal, steadied by clarity. One night, before dawn broke, I returned to the same table where it had begun. The chair across from me sat empty. The room was still. I slid the severance paper beneath a heavy book, pressing it down, anchoring the past beneath its weight. Outside, the city seemed to hold its breath. And in the silence, a question lingered in my mind, quiet yet insistent. How many betrayals must a man endure before he is finally free?